celebrates writers by fostering the development and distribution of Armenian literature in the English language. We were officially founded in 2021, but forced into the world sooner than expected when Azerbaijan attacked the autonomous Armenian region of Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, in September of 2020. At that time, we organized an awareness and benefit reading during what turned out to be a 44-day war, displacing 37,000 Armenians from their homeland. More recently, this September, we sounded another alarm when Azerbaijan had illegally enforced a blockade of 9 months, limiting 100,000 Artsakh Armenians from food, medicine, and fuel. Our event, Break the Silence, was held just 2 days before Azerbaijan attacked Artsakh again, with 24 hours of wide-scale bombing that forced those 100,000 Armenians to flee a genocidal regime, leaving behind their shared home, culture, and society. We are grateful for the non-Armenians who participated with readings and videos, answering our call for solidarity: Afghan, Kurdish, Cambodian, Ukrainian, and Palestinian poets, alongside writers from Artsakh. Today's event also follows in the footsteps of the Hyphen magazine and collective, who gathered Armenians and Swana artists and activists in conversation in their zine gatherings, interrogating language and offering common experiences across shared justice movements, and which Yala showcased this past June. Thank you to all the writers and organizers who are present today to share your work during this unimaginably violent time. Genocide seeks to kill words, dialogue, and imagination for those directly under attack and for those who are safe and compelled to speak out. Today, we resist genocide with our words. It's our hope that through this chorus of writers and organizations that we humbly learn from each other and extend our solidarity to become more empowered. So now it's my great honor to introduce to you Mashinka Firuns Hakopian, Yala Advisory Board member and co-organizer of today's reading. Mashinka is an Armenian board writer, artist, and researcher residing in Glendale, California. She was a 2021 visiting Mellon Professor of the Practice at Occidental College in the Department of Art and Art History. She holds a PhD in the History of Art from the University of Pennsylvania. Her recent book, The Institute for Other Intelligences, was released by X Artist Books in 2022. Her writing and commentary have appeared in wonderful publications. Mashinka has worked tirelessly and compassionately to organize this reading, and I thank you immensely. Shad Shinora Galuchun.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And as it happens, the first remarks that I had written out were to thank you for your tireless labor and care in co-organizing this, for which I'm enormously grateful. And to thank Olivia and Hofsep and the Yala team, our incredible readers, and our co-hosts at AAN, Fikra, Mizna, Palfest, Rawi, Writers Against the War on Gaza, and Yed Assad. You'll hear more about each of our co-hosts in a bit, but first I wanted to say that I'm delivering these remarks from unceded Tongva lands, as genocidal violence is unfolding globally across not only Artsakh and Palestine, but Congo, Sudan, Tigray, and beyond. After we watched the entire population of indigenous Armenians ethnically cleansed from Artsakh, no more than a week passed before we saw the intensification of an ongoing genocidal campaign in Gaza. The realities of that campaign are inarticulable, but nevertheless, it's our task and our duty to articulate them. Like so many others engaged in liberation struggle, Armenians and Palestinians share in common the experience of having our lives made unlivable on ancestral lands, and we share in common a resistance to forgetting and to being forgotten. So we're here to foreground writers who remember, who resist, who bear witness to the loss of life worlds, and who demand justice in their wake. On Wednesday, Refat Al-Arir, the Palestinian writer, scholar, and legendary professor at the Islamic University of Gaza, was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Among many other things, he was a committed translator, and in the days since his death, his poem, If I Must Die, has been translated into Japanese, Spanish, Urdu, and Chinese, among other languages. This multilingual proliferation underscores the force of his work and the fact that the struggle for a free Palestine is a global struggle, as all liberation struggles are. So in tribute to him, I'm going to read an informal Armenian translation of the poem that I prepared with the English text in the chat. Եթե ես պետք է մահանամ, դու պետք է ապրես, որ իմ պատմությունը պատմես, որ իմ ապրանքը ծախես, որ մի հատ կտոր առնես եւ մի քանի հատ թելեր, թող սպիտակ լինի կտորը երկար պոչով, որ երեխա մի տեղ Ղազայում նայելով ամպերի աչքին, սպասելով իր հայրին, ով որ կրակի մեջ գնաց, եւ ոչ մեկին ստեսություն չասեց, ոչ նույնիսկ իր հարազատներին, ոչ նույնիսկ ինքն իրան։ Այդ երեխան տեսնում է օթապարուկին, իմ օթապարուկին, որը որ դու ստեղծել ես, որը որ թռիչքում է վերևներում, եւ մտածում է մի վարքյանով, որ այնտեղ հրեշտակ կա, ով որ սերը վերադարձնում է։ Եթե ես պետք է մահանամ, թող այդ հույս բերի, թող պատմություն դառնա։ These final lines should haunt each of us. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale. Our words cannot be adequate to this moment, but we must be. So what is left to us? To organize, to tell stories of a liberated Artsakh, of a free Palestine, in spaces like this one, on the page, and in the streets, in every public square, until they're no longer stories and no longer tales, until we're no longer narrating a future horizon of liberation, but describing a present that has been collectively materialized. So before I introduce the first of our writers, I want to highlight the two organizations we're raising funds for and the critical work that they do. Palestine Legal bolsters the Palestine Solidarity movement by challenging efforts to threaten and harass activists into silence. Since October 7th, PAL Legal has received over 800 reports of suppression of Palestinian rights advocacy, more than triple the number the group reported last year. Among those it serves, PAL Legal protects the rights of writers, journalists, and cultural workers to advocate for a free Palestine. Please follow the link in the chat to donate, and please donate as generously as you can. All for Armenia provides crucial, long-term, sustainable aid to Artsakh's refugees, including the more than 100,000 people who experienced mass deportation less than 3 months ago, and who are now indefinitely displaced from their homes and facing extreme precarity. Again, the link to donate is in the chat, and we ask you to please donate as generously as you're able. With that, I'm going to introduce our first reader, Nelly Sarkisian, who will open the reading with the offering of a sung poetic medley. Nelly Sarkisian is an associate professor of anthropology at Emerson College. As a feminist, Sarkisian situates herself at the disciplinary intersections of political anthropology, queer studies, and critical race studies, among others. In her scholarly poetic work and teaching, Sarkisian is interested in stretching disciplinary and genre boundaries to explore the multisensory possibilities of feminist world-making. Her most recent research focuses on reproductive justice in conditions of militarization and life-sustaining relationships across borders of states and species. I'm deeply fortunate to call her a collaborator and a comrade. Nelly, off to you.
Thank you so much, dear Mashinka, dear Nancy, Yala, and all the organizers for this opportunity to stand, speak, and feel with each other. Անձրև եկավ շաղալեն, ուրու տերև դողալեն, Vay le 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 le. Vay le 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 le. August 1917. You gotta leave, my Armenian great-grandparents' Turkish neighbor says. They're setting the village on fire at dawn. My great-grandparents climbed up the nearby hill. My newborn grandfather rapped on my great-grandmother's chest while she was still bleeding from childbirth. She looked back, my great-grandmother. When she was up the hill, my baby grandfather rapped on her chest. She didn't turn into a pillar of salt. She saw the village ablaze. Oh, that's some lore. My dad is so skeptical in the 2000s. All I know is my dad was born in the village from which people got relocated to turn it into a lake border of sorts, separating Armenia and Turkey, he says. No one's neighbor said that, not theirs anyway. Hovarek sarer can, hovarek imdadim darmanarek sarera hov çenanum sarera hov çenanum imdadim darmananum imdadim darmananum. August 2014. Palestinian spoken word artist Rafif Ziada tells me, if my words can stop this, if they can stand in the way of a bomb, a drone, or a single bullet, if my words can stop this, if they can stand in the way of a bomb, a drone, or a single bullet, I would lay them all at the feet of every child in Gaza and offer them like prayer. I would recite them over and over and over, like the holy names of God. I would write them endlessly until all language breaks, like daylight. Arsharu iser norer batsver yerb din kurt nats nersmata. As we count our dead, Rafif chronicles, they ask me for balance. They still ask me for balance. He used to balance his son on his knees and sing, and now he's lost his legs and his son. How can I balance your silence against all the sound of artillery in Gaza? How can I balance your silence against neighborhoods wiped out into smoke? How can I balance between David and Goliath? You tell me. Oh, sorry, I know we're not meant to make these kinds of comparisons. They make some uncomfortable. So let me just say, Երկինքն ամպել է գետին ըթացե, Երկինքն ամպել է գետին ըթացե, Յարս քնել է, երեսը բացե, Յարս քնել է, երեսը բացե. This is no time for poetry. I read Rafif's words in October, December of 2023. Hovarek sarer can, hovarek. There's no space for bodies in hospitals, she says, anymore. There's no water, there's no electricity, no hospitals, I add. And in this darkness, she says, in this darkness, I wish my words could transform to light, to protection. Amper mi kiç zovarek, var aranzev tapek zovarek. And I wish for some quiet, she says. I wish for some quiet. I wish for some quiet from those who battle to get to the microphone and perform their rituals. I will not warn my death in 140 characters for your Twitter. My dead are not your bloody Facebook status. My dead are not there to be cluttered into an infographic that you share today and then forget. Hovarek, Amperjan, Hovarek, Imdardin, Darmanarek. Oh, no one's neighbor said that, my dad says. Not your great-grandparents anyway. If not my great-grandmother's neighbor. Someone's neighbor said that. If no one's neighbor said that, don't you wish someone's did? But words can't stop this. Rafif echoes my heartbreak and says, all I can offer you is this silence and a poem, and tell you are not to worry. We're still holding our ground. We're still holding our ground. We're still holding our ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nelly, for that beautiful offering of song, transforming your words through light to power. We're grateful to you for launching us into our program. We're going to start off with hearing from some of the organizations that are co-sponsoring and co-hosting today. And I'm very honored to introduce the first speaker, Aisha Hamed from Fikra magazine.
Thank you so much, first of all, for organizing this beautiful meeting and for standing in solidarity with Palestine. I am Aisha Hamed, co-founder of Fikra magazine. Fikra is an independent Palestinian literary magazine. You can read us online or in print, and we publish in both Arabic and English. We translate everything. I find it difficult to think about the fact that only 4 months ago, we celebrated the launch of Fikra in Ramallah with our friends, family, and cultural Palestine. It feels unreal, and it confronts me with what we're challenged with: the loss of our place in this world. I cannot travel home. I cannot hold my friends and family. And I'm very afraid of what I will find once I'm able to do so. There's always been a serious lack of freedom for Palestinian voices to express themselves. However, we now witness not only an alarming increase in censorship, but also the threat of the erasure of our culture, of us. It sometimes feels too little what we do. And then I receive messages from Palestinians all over the world telling me they find solace in the words they read in Fikra. And I find myself doing the same. So I want to end here by sharing just a few words of one of our beloved contributors, Samar Batrawi. Every Palestinian who is alive today is nothing shy of a miracle. You. I'm talking about you. You are a miracle. Your grandparents withstood annihilation for long enough to bear your parents, and they too withstood long enough to bear you. Perhaps you're younger than me, in which case we can add your great-grandparents to this improbable line of survival. Your body, your mind, your existence are sacred. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisha. That was unbelievably poignant. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Alina Kevorkian, Deputy Director of Mizna.
Thank you, Mashinka. Thank you, Nelly, for such a beautiful song. It was incredibly moving. Again, my name is Alina Kevorkian. I'm Deputy Director of Mizna, and along with our Executive Director, Lana Salah Bargoui, and our Executive Editor, George Abraham, we're really grateful to co-sponsor this event today. and to continue building solidarity with everyone through all our current and shared traumas that we're experiencing. MISNA is a critical platform for contemporary literature, film, and art, and cultural production, centering the work of Arab and Swana artists. And for more than 25 years, we've been creating a decolonized cultural space to reflect the expansiveness of our community and to foster exchange, examine ideas, and to engage audiences in meaningful art. Again, we center Arab and Southwest Asian and North African contemporary artists, writers, and filmmakers through our two keystone programs, the Arab Film Festival and the Misna Swana Literary Journal. We also program additional initiatives like readings, exhibitions, and political actions. And MISNA aims to be responsive to our vast community that spans the globe, and feels one of the best ways to do this is to be explicit in our values. And we want to offer a decolonized space where our artists can create work on their own terms. MISNA continues this ethos by participating in political actions where, for example, this year we supported fundraising efforts for Palestine, Armenia, Syria, and Morocco at our events and online. And we're grateful again to be present with you all here today. Free Artsakh, free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Alina, and for all that MISNA does. We're going to pivot again and present our writers. It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce Mai Serhan next. Mai Serhan is a Palestinian Egyptian writer, editor, and translator. She earned her MA in Arabic literature from the American University in Cairo and an MST in creative writing from the University of Oxford. An extract from her forthcoming memoir, Return is a Thing of Amber, was a finalist for the Narratively Memoir Prize, and her poetry collection, Cairo, The Undelivered Letters, won her the Center for Book Arts Poetry Chapbook Award in 2022. Thank you, Mai, for being here.
Thank you so much for organizing this, and I'm very grateful to be in your company tonight. It's been very difficult to write over these 2 last months, and just to witness and process and then put all this into words that make meaning. It's been very difficult. So I've just let my emotions guide me through the 2 poems that I'll be sharing with you tonight. The first one is called 0 Hour. Hey, you. I have premium seats to a phone screen. We can watch them round the men up, surround sound. Come on, sit up. It's Friday night. Or is it not on all days? I mean nights. And all phones. I've lost count, for fuck's sake. What numbers when you don't count? Go ahead and count. Subhumans on the screen dressed in dead. Put your VR glasses on. It bears it all. Oh no, 2 boys in 3D. No, 1 arm and 1 leg, mangled in high quality, like a leak through a crack. Deconstruction of a city over body. 2 brothers, or what's left, ghost blue on ashen red. Do you know dead does not mean dead? Or that words never meant what they all said? Dead is 2 legs running to wrap arms around a small head. It means running out of ways before the love goes flat. Oh no, girl with daisies on her dress. She grabs the ground with bare feet. She lost her grip. and from the window sees the bomb and says, "There's the moon, rising." She says, "Look how confetti flocks like birds. Sit up and kiss her eyes. Tell her all that you cannot. Tell her, birds do not mean birds. Birds were never meant to float. Birds are leaflets meant to drop from an aircraft, to read. Flee your home, evacuate, or risk the moon rising. Flee your hospital bed. Leave the baby swaddled in shroud. Go ahead and count. Death toll like conversion rates, because every zero on the right means a zero on the left. Don't factor in the too many. It's too much. Don't factor in this Friday night, this blackout, because nights like this are not numbered. Hey, you, where's the popcorn? Do you know what the sub-god said? He said, animal does not mean animal. It means Gazan, for fuck's sake. The second one is called Tunnel. Piers Morgan keeps asking, what's a proportionate response? Tell him, depends. If it's a home of willow and walnut palm, then it's bulletproof, memory. If it's a word, it's an epic verse. And there are no words for wounded child, no surviving family. Only an acronym, an anomaly. Tell him, if it's a child, it should not haunt his dreams. The child was never meant to be born by mother, but by land. This child is seed, remind him. Seed is underground, a stubborn thing, more underground than tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mai, for finding the words, for reclaiming and rewielding them. We're grateful. I wanted to remind our audience about the organizations that we're fundraising for today. Palestine Legal has been working nonstop to support and defend the rights of those who've been harassed, threatened, doxxed, or fired for speaking out for Palestinian freedom. So please take a moment now. We have the link in our chat to donate to Palestine Legal. And All for Armenia has been active since the 2020 war in Artsakh. And one of the first humanitarian orgs on the ground to help Artsakh Armenians when they were forcibly displaced recently. They continue to supply aid for daily needs as well as long-term support. So please take a moment or get that link and hold on to it and donate to All for Armenia. Thank you.
So next, it's my pleasure to introduce Sophia Arman, who's not only a writer, but a tireless political organizer and builder of Swana coalitions. She'll be giving a reading as well as discussing Armenian-American Action Network, the organization she co-directs with Dr. Susie Abadjian. Sophia Arman is a community organizer and writer born and raised in Los Angeles and co-director of Armenian-American Action Network and the Feminist Front. Her work appears in the Los Angeles Times, Armenian Weekly, the Electronic Intifada, and We Are All Armenian, Voices from the Diaspora, an anthology of essays with University of Texas Press. She is a descendant of genocide survivors from Karpert, Hajin, Istanbul, and Van. Sophia, off to you.
Thank you, Mashinka. And I want to just say a huge, huge thank you to everybody who's been organizing and everybody who organized this. Very honored to be here. I've been asked to read the poem that the title of this event comes from, which is a poem by Najwan Darwish. Who Remembers the Armenians by Palestinian poet Najwan Darwish, 2014. I remember them, and I ride the nightmare bus with them each night, and my coffee this morning, I'm drinking it with them. You murderer, who remembers you? Who Remembers the Palestinians after Najwan Darwish by Sophia Arman, 2021. We do. And I ride the bus to the Nakba protests with them each day, and my surge this morning, we are drinking it with them. You genocider, who remembers you? I'm going to read just a couple things. I'm really not a poet or a writer, to be honest. I'm a fake here, but we're all just trying to do whatever we can to make each other feel and listen, if I can, in the movement. So I'm a genocide descendant from both sides of my family, people who survived and were displaced and people who did not and were massacred. My last name, Arman, is a placeholder because I'm directly from a genocide orphan, a boy too young that he was unidentifiable because his family was all killed and he was left alone. I am from a boy who was all that was left from an entire lineage of human beings, like the ones you're seeing now. We came from genocide, and through it, we became anti-genocide organizers, door-knocking anti-genocide petitions at 9 with my dad, and then a genocide scholar because this world was cruel and would not listen. It's been all our lives. My family lives in limbo outside our homeland with no reparations, no recognition, no right of return, no justice. Our specific civilization in the form it existed for thousands and thousands of years was all but annihilated. I have understood 1948 in my bones and the experiences of my Palestinian comrades in ways no person or book or personality can tell me, in ways words will never make meaning of. I'm here today to basically tell you there are no justifications for genocide. Today, I'm telling you, you must act. You on this call, listening. It's you. This is serious, and I need you to listen. You need to act because when you do not, you create generations of trauma and violence that cannot be undone. Violence like this is what I can only think can only be described as the appearance of hell itself on earth. It is the red line. It's the worst that humans can do, mass violence. We must wake up. The idea of collective punishment is the basis of almost every genocide in the last century, and this is inexcusable. We need to organize for a ceasefire now. Make these politicians hear us. If you are in the US, get in the street. It's on us. Remember the genocide by stopping now. Okay, my poem is here. Here we go. I thought a lot about what I wanted to say today, and to be honest, I think the best use of my time is to honor the generation of Palestinian organizers that I come from, comrades and dear friends, and I want to put their name onto record right now. I'm a 90s kid because they're organizing right now, and I want to honor them. Palestine is a brown dove. Everybody is always telling me that white is right, but I don't know. I have seen the color of earth, things that nurture and grow, the backs of our hands, our areolas, the eyes we are supposed to want to replace with something called Barbie or so. It's all quite alarming when they have tatas in them from times unknown. Palestine is Lubna Katami's foresight, so you all could have a place to march today with the PYM. Palestine is the Marar sisters' curls flowing as they take over the Golden Gate Bridge, and so Lulu can take it back to her salon in time to fix yours. Palestine is Taher as a teen and 20-something, defying a man in the name of God, and us caravanning the Irvine 11 trials and failing our finals, and another Oren massacre, and yet it is him being condemned by a judge. Palestine is Nadia Tanus, who can only send voice notes because there has been no breath, no minutes for phone calls in the organizing of 10, maybe 20, maybe 75 years. Palestine is Sharif Zarkut in a room full of women, showing us through humility and love what it means to be a man. Palestine is Yasmin, learning about the abortion rights struggle in one hand while holding a megaphone for her people in the other. I tell her I am proud of her. She says, I am proud to be Palestinian. Palestine is Celine with that angel soft voice, if you know it, compassionate as the light of the beginning of your day, and hitting that stage on that damn flatbed truck at the rally under secretly the kafia with the loudest dang chants Los Angeles has ever heard. Palestine is Nardine, making these fuckers shake down into their very boots, shaking in fear. Palestine is Remy Kanazi's dad jokes that make you cry as you keel over in pain. Palestine is Shireen, who had to give us paintings of closed eyes on Instagram so we can see. Palestine is Debking on the ruins of empires while building. The innovation for this world you think comes from Teslas and streets, but is Palestinians Debking on the ruins of empires while building. If we must all go down, then let it be. Palestine is Rashida's beautiful wide smile, drenched in tears on the Washington steps in the pouring rain. Palestine is Linda's black eyeliner she applies every morning. It's Iman and the pictures of her mother, the best evidence no genocide case could come close to. Palestine is a brown dove, not something else, who flaps her wings for somebody somewhere, for everybody and everywhere, lone but strong. A small frame who flies for something called freedom. Out there in the ozone up there, she's carving another level for us, so one day we can breathe. Okay. Oh, God. Sorry, I'm really like nervous and shaky. I don't even know. Do I have time for the shortest other second one, Mashinka? Did I mess it up? Okay, I'm gonna shut up and keep going. Sorry. Okay. Mashinka told me to do this, so I'm doing it for her. Here we go. For a movement, you have to move. You are somewhere, me too. Us who they say are nobodies, but here we are, points. But the problem is really all the fixing. See, fixed points, they don't work for this. See, for a movement, you have to move. Even stars, though they look fixed, are burning, moving, exploding gracious gas, gallivanting somewhere, telling these fuckers to burn right off, giving us beauty from generations before they didn't know we would ever see. See, we all become ancestors. And I have seen the arguments, and none of them are so persuasive as your hands and your feet. You see, my hands are shaking. My voice has been trembling too this whole time, since a baby with black hair could breathe. I've been confused and lost and most definitely self-doubting every time I speak. But we have to be like stars too, burning up air. So somebody small can see beauty later, even if we are gone and don't get to see. I have seen all the arguments, and none of them are so persuasive as your hands outstretched for loving and your feet in the streets. I don't want any more emails at 4 a.m. saying, what is happening? What are you doing about this? We have been screaming. I want the way grandmother hands feel. I want compassion behind the fear in all of our eyes. I want arms big asking, how can we help? How are you feeling? How can we show up for each other? The we, some of the most radical revolutionary offerings you can offer a human. See, it's not complicated, it's us. No one is coming to save us. It's always been the we. As my comrade Eric Adamian says, right now we don't need your thoughts and prayers. So I'll see you in the marches, and more importantly, in the meetings and in the sunshine, getting to know each other, building that deep love no fascism can break, no matter what is codified and prophesized at the UN conventions and the tables, until we win. Until we win, I will see you in the streets. I will see you in the meetings and in the sunshine, and then I will see you at the coming dawn justice, and we will stretch out our hands and shake out our feet when we win.
Thank you, Sophia. If you're not a writer, I don't know who the fuck is. Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing your family, for your witness, for your understanding of solidarity and the work of tireless activists, bringing it into words and images. Thank you so much for your call to action. And I think we all need to take a moment to breathe after that. I know I do. It's my great honor to introduce our next writer. Michaela Cabney Rain is a Palestinian-American queer femme dyke, mother, multi-genre writer, visual artist, and activist. She grew up in the Little Arabia community in California and graduated from Chapman University. During that time, she became a member of the Radius of Arab American Writers, one of our co-hosts today, ACT UP, and Queer Nation. She has been a community organizer for over 35 years in North America and is committed to international human rights, especially that of Indigenous and displaced peoples, women, LGBTIQ communities, and those affected by HIV and AIDS. Her work appears in a plethora of wonderful and amazing publications. Please welcome Michaela today.
Hello, I am in the sacred lands of the Timucua and Seminole peoples, whose ancestors have lived and cared for these lands and waters since time immemorial. I thank them for having me on their land today. In these sad and heavy times, when so many of our communities are facing violent colonialism and ethnic cleansing, it is important for us to come together to listen to our people, our activists, our poets, and our artists. My wish for today's event is that our shared sorrow gives us the care that we need to feel valued and remain steadfast for all of our communities. The first poem I want to read is a snapshot in time, written before my first trip to Palestine in the mid-90s. At that time, I was living in the Little Arabia area of California, where I grew up. And as a mixed race Palestinian mother, I'm grateful to each of my communities of color for supporting my journey. When I wrote this poem, I was living through or grieving my way through the HIV/AIDS pandemic. On weekends, I was a behind the scenes assistant with the Royal Court's drag artists and entertainers. Drag artists and my larger queer and trans communities of color taught me a lot of life lessons that helped me navigate being a lesbian and a Palestinian in America. When HIV/AIDS came and took our community in many waves of death, that made life even more difficult for me because it added to the grief and fear I already felt for Palestine and my family living there. With such deep loss on both fronts, I was grieving so much that activism and community organizing was the only way I could survive it. It was where I found myself being the fullest expression of myself and feeling a purpose for my life. My communities and the act of activism helped me transform my own sufferings and emotion into more action. Today is International Human Rights Day, and I can say that I still believe in the work, that working to transform oppressive and violent systems will move our world toward justice and achieve human rights. 35 years later, I'm not saying the struggle was successful, far from it, but it was always worth it for me every day. My first reading will be excerpts from my poem entitled La Sombra of Who I Am, that was first published in the Poetry of Arab Women, a contemporary anthology. La Sombra of Who I Am. I, white-skinned, opinionated queer girl, am valueless to men. I, lesbian, of color, if only deep inside, am to them a freak. I want to know the women in my blood. I have never cooked traditional bread in a taboon, only work anav on a gas stove, with bottled grape leaves and lamb meat bought from the Arab butcher. I have no ingrained tolerance for maleness to lift me to freedom, freedom from men, freedom to cushion my new realities. I am unacquainted with tradition, its severity of punishment for all that is considered haram. Can I, young lesbian, whiter looking than most Anglos, silence my own voice, succumb to male superiority, so I can discover my hamule and my grandmothers? If woman only has power through man, can I hide my lesbianness? For love between women is much more than haram. It is impossible here. I am bent. Soy una niñita del sol, an outsider looking inward to search for the visionary Palestinian woman who is calling to me. dancing on the sandy soil of my past. I miss my grandmother's hands watching them as she washed the grape leaves, mixed the lamb with lemon juice, kneading with both hands in a large bowl, watching her hands turn the pages of my herstory to her nightlight as we slept. I in the bed of my dead grandfather, watching sus manos work endless crossword puzzles, not knowing how to love me. Todavía la mujer comes to me, dancing con la música en mi alma. I must, to complete the circles of my life, follow the visionary mujer, wandering backward, not forward, to find myself. Mientras la sombra of who I am is widening, and soon will be overtaken by the darkness, as the same wind that once caressed her face, now ancient, holds mine to the stars. My next two poems I'm going to share were written in Ramallah, Palestine. This first poem is entitled Accept the Moon and is included in the current issue of Ro'ayat Journal. Air pushing past wind from the Hasidim's undulating, chants rising with the reddened sky's lament, grieving the loss of her son. Breath thick with prayer enters, pulling hope from our bellies, painting day's luminous dissension. Sandpaper rain streaks down our cheeks, us daring to dream of sky without walls, days without end, our lovers catching up to the sun, searching for lunary texts, bringing freedom from the moon's reign. We, sun chasers, running away from others' eyes, journeys rooted far ago in rounded starlight, astral reflections, bleaching our tears' view. With bone needles, we became the last knots in threaded canvas, holding our families together, Tatrice. Our legacy sand slipping through rain, an imperial eclipse, the smell of dough rising over firelit taboons, darkness breaking open, grieving the sum of light. A mathematical equation of survival versus joy, star versus sun, the difference between giving up and giving out, between truly living or not. The red-filled poppies close echoes in the moontide, on its way to us, silent in the constellation's ascension. My soul remembers your eyes staring, hidden in the shadows with tabbouleh and bread alone. We runners in a growing expanse of night, watching our shadows disappear with hope in our bellies, learning to accept the moon. In that poem, you heard the theme of Tatrice. Tatrice is an indigenous Palestinian cross-stitch embroidery that has been passed down through many generations. Tatrice is at the center of my current writing and artistic work. And if you'd like more information, there's a free resource page on my blog talking about Tatrice, and it's a good place to start to learn about it and has good online resources for you. The next poem is titled On the Night of Invasion and will be published in the next edition of Kafia Review. On the night of invasion, they sew bodies together, stabbing with needles a bone, our woven bodies becoming their flag. On the night of invasion, drones scan faces, Palestinian eyes, a charting of land. Our children, their plotted cartography. Parents shelter children with arms embrace, as bodies smolder beneath buildings and prayers ascend in the ashen fog, a sacred ritual to the moon. An ancient invocation, a chant to God, a promise to the stars, a sacred sumud, honoring our martyrs, repeating. On the night of invasion, with guns for eyes, they target breath in green darkness. Tanks bring machine guns pointing outward. Children's fists of rock are not enough. Our homes are mapped by blood rain, a crimson compass. On the night of invasion, smoke chokes out sky, stealing air so we can breathe in faith and fear, a sour soot. We exhale anger and sorrow, land's bitter embers, until we speak smoke from our mouths. The power of today's event is in bringing together our collective struggles and movements. What we learn from each other is immeasurable, and will serve us well as we work together in the future. We have so much to share with each other and so much hard work in front of us, and I'm honored to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Michaela. Thank you so much for that offering. So next we are going to hear from George Abraham, who will be introducing us to our co-hosts at ROWI.
Hey y'all, my name is George Abraham. Thank you again for having me speak at this brilliantly moving and necessary event. My name is George Abraham. I'm speaking to you all from the unceded lands of the Council of Three Fires, also known as Chicago, to speak about the Radius of Arab American Writers as a board member, and I'll also end by saying a few things about MISNA to you all as their executive editor. So ROWI, Radius of Arab American Writers, is a volunteer-run nonprofit that has been uplifting Sawana writers for over 30 years. We were founded by Barbara Nimri Aziz, and we've been led by folks like Ital Adnan, Naomi Shihabnai, Hayan Sharara, Ranja Sharar, and so many more. Our main programming sort of centers around a biannual literary festival, which this year kind of served as a necessary convergence of like many of us just coming in rage and mourning about Palestine. And we didn't know as we were planning the festival where we would be. I was in late October, and how needed a space like this was. And so we do this event every 2 years. It is usually hybrid, both virtual and in person, and we hope to continue doing that. We've also done programs like virtual and in-person readings, such as this one, running the annual Arab Caucus at the AWP conference, running mentorship programs to give people industry advice, and also doing retreats. So we hope people will connect with us on our website, and subscribe to our newsletter, become a member, and follow us on social media. We would really love to connect with everyone here, and be as much of advocates as we can given our limited capacity. I'll end by saying a few words about MISNA as well as their executive editor, kind of following Ali's words earlier. We have a long history of publishing Palestinians and Armenians, and we'd really love to consider more writing from everyone in the event. Our upcoming cinema issue features incredible poetry from Jen Siraganian about her father's Palestinian-Armenian exilic trajectories, alongside an incredible personal essay by Laurie Friedman about her experiences auditioning for various TV shows, told through a historical lens on personal and national experiences of racialization as an Armenian. So these are just two of many examples of Armenian works and Palestinian works that we featured. Our submission deadlines for our upcoming issue is this Friday. We've linked to a Google Doc with an invitation to everyone in the event, and also we're publishing more works online that are more urgent, responding to needs right now in the community. We just published a poem by Hiba Abunada Alagarhamha, another Gaza poet martyred by the state, translated by Huda Fakhreddin. So if there are any folks, especially on the ground right now, that you all are connected to, feel free to connect us via email and whatnot. We want to be here, if anything, of just not even just to be a platform for Palestine and for Armenian folks everywhere, but also to give financial and monetary support to writers too. So please reach out, and thank you all again for having me.
Thank you so much, George, for being here and for the critical work that MISNA does so many of us feel so addressed and seen by the space that you all have created there. So we were going to be joined today by the incredible Perwana Nazif from WAWAG, from Writers Against the War on Gaza, but she was not able to be here for extenuating reasons, so she sent me a statement to read on her behalf. Writers Against the War on Gaza is an ad hoc coalition committed to solidarity with and liberation for the Palestinian people. WAWAG started as a letter in October 2023 with the intention to provide ongoing infrastructure for cultural organizing in response to the war. The group includes artists, filmmakers, writers, and academics, mostly concentrated in the US and Canada right now, but expanding. Some of their partners include Palestinian Youth Movement, PAL Legal, National Writers Union, and other media and labor unions, as well as BDS, or boycott, divestment, sanctions, and more specifically, PACB efforts toward the international cultural boycott of Israel. If you want to get involved or would like to know more information and receive updates, you can sign up for the newsletter on the Writers Against the War on Gaza website. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Karani Rose Mikerdichan from Yerezad Coalition.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and for having me. I feel very honored to be here and space with you all in the face of this unspeakable horror that we are witnessing and pathetic cowardice and silence from people that we are witnessing and resistance. So thank you all. I'm joining you from the unceded land of the Gabrielino Tongva people, also known as Los Angeles. I am the co-founder and values steward of Yerezad Coalition, and I am also the descendant of genocide survivors on both sides of my family, the Armenian genocide and the descendant of chattel slavery survivors here in this country. So my connection to all of our work and organizing was deeply instilled in me from my ancestors and my parents. And Yerezad Coalition, we are an action coalition that is centered on Armenian liberation, but also building transnational solidarity with other communities. We really wanted to make sure that we were filling a much needed gap in the real progressive organizing space in Armenian organizing. So we are making sure that we're showing up for everyone and all marginalized communities that we can, from Turtle Island to Artsakh to Tigray to Kurdistan to Palestine. We center and uplift all Armenians, and that includes Armenians who are mixed race, Armenians who are members of the LGBTQIA2S community, and Armenians who are undocumented. We are intersectional in our organizing and internationalists. We are anti-racist, we are decolonial, and we are abolitionists. So we go very hard in what we do. A lot of our work centers coalition building, and that can come in the form of events like this, making sure that we are closing information gaps, because there are a lot of people who genuinely are not as informed about things that are happening in the world. And that comes from interpersonal flyering, from information and graphics that we share as well on social media and events that we put on. We've also had some webinar events and policy specific organizing events as well, and coalition groups across the country. And we have members who join us in other countries as well. And right now we currently have a fundraiser for displaced Artsaksis. We're partnering with the Artsakh Social Developments and Project Fund to build sustainable jobs, so centered on greenhouses and beekeeping opportunities for Armenians who were displaced from Artsakh in this genocidal ethnic cleansing that we witnessed about a month ago. And this will help provide a real essential source of income and food security for these families. They will be provided with permanent housing in Armenia proper and the materials that are needed for these greenhouse and beekeeping sustainable jobs. So feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We are always looking to collaborate with folks and build these coalitions of solidarity, because none of us can do this on our own, and we need to make sure that we are showing up for each other. Thank you all so much for all of this, and feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Karani. The work that Yerazad does is truly singular. So to add to Karani's listing of the incredible greenhouses for Artsakh project that they're doing, I also wanted to shoot off a quick reminder that we're here to also raise funds for the critical work of PAL Legal and for All for Armenia. So links to donate are in the chat. Please donate as generously as you're able. Next, it's my great pleasure to introduce Nancy Krikorian, who's a member of YALA's advisory board and who's provided crucial support for this reading. Nancy will be giving a reading of her own, as well as discussing the work of PALFest. Nancy Krikorian is the author of the novels Zabel, Dreams of Bread and Fire, and All the Light There Was. Her essays and poems have appeared in the LA Review of Books, Quarterly, Guernica, Parnassus, Minnesota Review, the Mississippi Review, and other journals. She has taught at Barnard, Columbia, Rutgers, Yale, and New York University, as well as for Teachers and Writers Collaborative in the New York City Public Schools. She participated in the 2010 Palestine Festival of Literature and taught at the Palestine Writing Workshop in Beirut in 2011. Her new novel about Armenians in Beirut during the Lebanese Civil War will be published by Red Hen Press in 2025.
Hi, everybody. I have been asked to speak today about and on behalf of the Palestine Festival of Literature, one of the sponsors of today's event. PALFest, which was founded in 2008, brings international writers to Palestine for a series of literary and cultural events with their Palestinian counterparts. The festival aims to affirm the power of culture over the culture of power. Because of the restrictions on the movement of Palestinians, PALFest is a road show that has visited major Palestinian educational and cultural institutions and communities throughout the West Bank, Jerusalem, within the borders of 1948 Israel, and 1 year in Gaza when that was briefly possible. When I was a participant on PALFest in 2010, we traveled through the West Bank, being given a reality tour of Israel's brutal occupation in the hopes that we would write about what we saw when we returned home. Most, if not all, writers who participate in the festival are radically transformed by the experience and take on the sacred trust of bearing witness to what they have seen. Omar Hamilton, a writer and filmmaker who is one of PALFest's organizers, producers, asked me to mention today his admiration for Albert Agazarian, an Armenian-Palestinian Jerusalemite descended from survivors of the Armenian genocide. Albert, whom I met during PALFest in 2010 and who died in 2020, was a much revered historian long affiliated with Birzeit University, and he was also a member of the Palestinian delegation to the Madrid Peace Conference in 1991, where he was the head of its media team. Albert considered himself equally Armenian and Palestinian, but above all, he was a Jerusalemite. The two pieces I read now were inspired by my travels with PALFest. I dedicate the reading of the first one to Albert's memory and to the young Armenian organizers in Jerusalem who are currently resisting a despicable land grab by settlers in the Armenian Quarter. It's called Stories from the Armenian Quarter. G tells me that a few months after the Israelis conquered East Jerusalem, he asked his father what he thought life would be like. Would it be better or worse than under the Ottomans, the British, or the Jordanians, all of whom his father had known? The old man told him that only the week before, an American Jewish dentist had offered free dental care to all the Armenian kindergarten children at the Holy Translators School. They can't be all bad, his father said, if they want to look after our children's teeth. Later, G met the dentist himself and thanked him for his good offices. Yes, the dentist said, there was some discussion in the upper echelons of the Israeli government about whether the Armenians had intermarried with the Arabs. I went, he said, to inspect the children's teeth. You can tell from the jaw structure. And I was able to report that the Armenians were 100% pure. B, a priest I meet at a church supper in Virginia during my book tour, tells me that when he was a seminarian in Jerusalem in the early 70s, the Haredi Jews spat on the Armenian priests on a daily basis and on the seminary students. He says, one day I just got fed up with it. I called the other seminarians together, there were 5 of us, and we agreed that we'd undo our belts and keep the belts in our hands inside our cassocks. We walked out of the church and a man spat on us, and we pulled out our belts and gave him a thrashing. It might not have been the Christian thing to do, but I was young then, and it was satisfying. I say to B, well, they still spit on the priests on a daily basis in the Armenian quarter. Yes, he tells me, I know. I couldn't stay there, he said. I might have risen higher in the church if I had stayed, and the spitting I could have learned to tolerate, but watching the way they degraded the Palestinians was too much for me. N says that everything is a problem in the Armenian quarter. Getting a building permit is a problem, having a regular travel document is a problem, even finding a place to park your car is a problem. The patriarch signed a 99-year lease with an Israeli company that wanted to build a parking lot on Armenian Patriarchate land, she says. They built the parking lot and we could park there, although we had to pay more than the Israelis did. And then one day they decided it was a Jews-only parking lot and we could no longer park there because we were Armenian, even though it was on land belonging to the Armenian church. And says, they don't want us here, that's clear. They want the churches, they want the houses, the land, and they want the money from the Christian pilgrims and tourists. I think ideally they would like all the Christians to disappear, and then Jews could dress up as Christians, like characters in Disney World. Kay's family has been in Jerusalem for several generations. He outlines their entire trajectory, where his grandparents lived when they first arrived after the genocide, where they took their children during the war in 1948, the house they returned to in 1950, how they managed in 1967, and how they live today with ever greater difficulty. Kay says, just because I'm Armenian doesn't mean that I'm treated differently from other Palestinians. I think of myself as a Palestinian who is an ethnic Armenian. We breathe the same tear gas. It takes some prodding, but S, the owner of a ceramic shop, finally tells me what he thinks of the occupation. They are chopping us like salad, he says. Everyone who has any means is leaving. They are slicing us like salami. First Gaza, then the West Bank. We are only hoping the machine breaks down before they get to us. The second piece is a poem called Letter to Palestine with Armenian Proverbs. In a foreign place, the exile has no face. You wake up in the morning and forget where you are. The smell of coffee from the kitchen, the sound of slippers across the linoleum floor. It could be any country. When you look in the mirror, you see the eyes of your grandfather. He expects something from you, but he won't tell you what. Better to go into captivity with the whole village than to go to a wedding alone. The fabric was torn. With scraps you have made a tent. You have fashioned a kite. You have sewn a dress. You have wrapped yourself in a flag. They have separated you with gun, grenade, barbed wire, wall, prison, passport. They have underestimated your will. The hungry dream of bread, the thirsty of water. Passing from one village to the next without obstacle, without document, without your heart thumping up near your throat. Turning the key in the lock, you enter through a door you have never passed through before, except in your grandmother's stories and in your dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. That was beautiful. And thank you for testifying for the Armenian Quarter. Next is our wonderful co-organizer, Mashinka Firuns Hakopian, who I won't read your bio, Mashinka, but I did want to just say how much we're all indebted to you as a writer for the articles you've been writing about what's been happening in Artsakh. Thank you, and we're so honored to hear your work today.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and I'm so indebted to this community of practitioners and to you. I'm going to read just a few brief excerpts from a recent essay called Where Scenes of Catastrophe Reappear. In August, I attended a screening of Aurora's Sunrise at the New Plaza Cinema. The documentary scenes depict the annihilation of Armenian life worlds in the Ottoman Empire at the beginning of the 20th century. In August, these scenes were mistaken for historical records. Viewers did not yet know that they were also premonitions. By September, images of the mass deportation of Armenians from Artsakh circulated on digital screens, set to the epistemic violence of denialism. Descendants of survivors saw our ancestral narratives retold and relived in real time, losses mounting in the present, superimposed over the losses of a century ago, a palimpsest of expulsion flickering into view as we looked on. By September's end, mass deportation along the Lachin corridor formed a serpentine path visible from space and indexed via Maxar Technologies satellite imaging. These satellite captures were arranged in digital diptychs alongside historical photography of Armenians on death marches through the Syrian desert to Deir ez-Zor. The images are labeled 2023 and 1915, respectively. By October, an ongoing campaign of genocidal violence had intensified in Palestine, killing thousands and laying claim to the life worlds of millions, most among them refugees several times over who had already watched each generation before them dispossessed. By early November, as Palestinians experienced mass deportation from their homes in northern Gaza, diptychs were composed, juxtaposing the march southward with images of the Nakba. They were labeled 2023 and 1948, respectively. These images attest to the transhistorical linkage of Armenian and Palestinian liberation struggle and visualize those linkages in the present. Those of us familiar with these scenes through their ancestral transmission clamored that we have seen this before. We know what appears next, who disappears if nothing is done. Against this backdrop, one of my elders tells me, our ancestors' photographs are repeating themselves. What does it mean to be from a place in the world where scenes of catastrophe reappear from one century to the next, but remain invisible in both temporalities? Our ancestors' photographs are repeating themselves even as they remain invisible to global observers. One photograph in particular repeats itself to me with some regularity. It belongs to a genre of documents common to Armenian family archives, images of people who existed before 1915 and did not exist afterward. This yellowed portrait depicts my great-grandfather, a rug merchant, and his wife in Van, what was then Western Armenia and is now Turkey. They make a striking couple, distinguished in the finery they wore for the photograph, each projecting an air of effortless regality. His gaze directed beyond the frame of the image and hers unflinchingly confronting the camera. The two later fled Van during the genocide, which he survived and she did not. They were stopped on their escape route and momentarily separated when a gun was fired. He returned to find that she had died after sustaining a terror-induced heart attack when she heard the shot ring out. The first time the story was told to me, I wondered how he could be certain that it was the terror that took her life. Because as a child born in Armenia but educated in the nucleus of US empire, I had learned to expect that even in death, she was obliged to provide substantiating evidence of the cause of her own suffering. Since September, this photograph repeats itself to me every day. Diptychs depicting the repetitions of 1915 and 2023, 1948 and 2023 are instructive. Placed alongside one another, they become a grid of interlocking attempted erasures, undone by our collective refusal to be erased. Those who have just witnessed the erasure of Artsakh's people from its mountains know intimately what it means to cast a dispassionate gaze at the repetition of ancestral images. That gaze licenses the disappearance of Armenians from Artsakh, of Palestinians from Gaza and the occupied West Bank. We are from a place where scenes of catastrophe reappear from one century to the next and remain invisible in both. But in each, they have the capacity to effloresce into scenes of struggle, of solidarity, and of collective liberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mashinka. I'm so looking forward to reading the entire essay. Before I introduce the final reader, I did want to take a moment because Armenian American Action Network wasn't introduced earlier. So I just wanted to say real briefly about their vital work, that they are a U.S. advocacy and research organization fighting anti-Armenian racism in the United States and forwarding Armenian and all communities' civil rights, immigrant rights, and refugee rights. And right now they're launching an anti-discrimination reporting system. So please look into the work of Armenian American Action Network, one of our co-hosts and co-sponsors today. It's my great honor to introduce our final reader for today. Lina Khalaf Tufaha is a Palestinian poet, essayist, and translator. She's the author of 3 books of poetry, Water and Salt, winner of the 2018 Washington State Book Award, Khan and Her Sisters, and Something About Living, winner of the 2022 Akron Prize, forthcoming from University of Akron Press in 2024. Thank you so much for being here, Lina.
Thank you, Nancy and Mashinka and everyone who has made this incredible gathering possible. I'm going to be walking through the rest of the day with all of your beautiful voices in my head. I'm grateful that we have each other. We are, despite all of the grief and suffering we're all enduring, we're actually incredibly lucky because we have each other to call family. Thank you, Nancy Krikorian, for bringing Albert Agazarian's name into this conversation. He was a beloved friend, the truest Jerusalemite I ever met, and I would like to dedicate my reading today to him and his memory. I'm reading to you today from the home of the Duwamish and the Coast Salish people. And here in Seattle, we invite people to go visit Real Rent Duwamish as a way to move beyond just naming the lands where we live, but also participate in reparations. So I invite you to visit that website and also look for organizations like that in your own communities and the lands where you live. The first poem I'll read is from my book, Khan and Her Sisters. Root work. In Arabic class, we learned that all words can be traced back to their 3-letter roots. Miss Sahar used to slash through their hearts with chalk to show us. The distance between a writer and her desk, or the one and loneliness, were coiled in the majuscules of meme, lurking in Alif's languid yawn. When words form a dense fog, I go foraging. It's easiest with the news. That vocabulary shrinks year after year. I know the few letters needed for understanding. In our language, the difference between witness and tombstone is just one vowel. The next poem I'll read is a newer one that was just recently published in the LA Review of Books alongside several beloved Palestinian poets. The state of noun gerund of the verb to journey, a setting out, a departure. A boy's voice calls out from beneath what used to be the second story of a house. I am here, he cries. Can anyone hear me? I am here, and the night sky is sleeping on my chest. Noun gerund of the verb to leave, an exodus, a detachment. A father has gone in search of bread. A baker has gone in search of flour. A mother has gone in search of a cloud. A people have gone, a world in each of them. Noun gerund of the verb to travel, a parting, a demise. A girl steps on top of the walls of what used to be the third story of a house. I am searching for the sea, she cries. Has anyone seen it? It used to live in my window. And I'll just end with a final poem from my new forthcoming book, Something About Living. And this is after Edward Said. To be self-evident. Every empire tells its subjects a story of revelation. The trees let down their aging leaves, listless in late drought. The children thrive on filtration, their classroom air and their selfies sanitized. Every empire seems invincible as its borders submerge, its manicured hillsides incinerate between guaranteed next day deliveries. Every empire eulogizes its value system, splurges for pyrotechnics, decorates its mausoleums for the holidays. Every empire turns against its colonies, cradling the embassy's crystal in bubble wrap, packing extra treats for the dogs on the evacuation flight home. Every empire promises a revolution against itself. The children are tasked with designing the future, growing walls of hydroponic greens, rebranding old protest anthems. Every empire denies the iceberg it crashes into, hires a chorus, funds the arts. Every empire sings itself a lullaby. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. That was incredibly moving. I'm Olivia Katranjian, the founder of the International Armenian Literary Alliance. I'm so grateful that you all have joined us for this reading. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Mashinka Firun-Sagopian and Nancy Agabian for working so tirelessly to organize this reading with such care. We are all indebted to you. And to Hovset Markaryan for providing crucial support. We could not have done this without you all. It is an honor for us to come together today with so many like-minded organizations. We are grateful to the Palestine Festival of Literature, the Radius of Arab American Writers, MISNA, Fikra Magazine, the Armenian American Action Network, Writers Against the War on Gaza, and Yerazad for joining us and standing beside us in solidarity. I hope in the future we can continue to support each other and build bridges connecting our literary communities, not only in reaction to unspeakable violence, but also in what I hope are more peaceful times. Thank you so much to our readers, Sophia Arman, Nancy Krikorian, Michaela Kabney-Rain, Nelly Sarkisian, Mai Serhan, Lena Khalif Tufaha. Your words have power and will stay with me. Thank you as well to Arthur Kaizakian, Ahimsa Timoteo Boran, Nancy Krikorian, and Rusha Abdulhadi for help in making this event possible. Armenians living in the diaspora know too well that, in the words of Dr. Horace Chilingirian, culture is the land of a landless people. I founded Yala on the belief that we must support our writers in order for our culture and people to survive across continents. In times of crisis, this need becomes even more vital. Nancy Krikorian, who spoke so powerfully today, wrote in her poem, Homage to Borj Hamoud, "O people of long memory, listen, look, speak, remember. Your stories are a homeland. We are peoples who have been forced to endure displacement upon displacement upon displacement. And I hope everyone who has joined us has found refuge, if only for a moment, in the poetry and prose shared today. If you're able, please support Palestine Legal and All for Armenia. The links are in the chat. Please see Yala's website for opportunities to engage with and support our work. Let us all continue to find solace and strength in writing and reading. Thank you.